Are you everyone? Welcome back. Welcome back, Lou. This is part 6 of our series about the Predator Narcissist. So you were saying about hoovering, wasn't you?
I was indeed. I'd just like to welcome back all of our listeners. And we were talking about the hoovering process and the discard process. And this is a backwards and forwards thing as well, because you get a discard. Right? It will go off. You'll be left trying to work out what's going on and rebuild your strength. And it will still keep trying to maintain contact. Now, after the first discard, you don't know what's going on. You want it to come back. You want to try and work things out. You may try counselling. You want to go to couples counselling, etc., etc. Right? They can then come back, right? And everything's rosy in the garden for anything from a few days to a few weeks, even a few months. But the pattern will return. Yeah. And this is where I cannot stress enough that you must take notice of the pattern, because you're going to go, oh no, not again. Right? And it is, and it will keep going on and on and on until you empower yourself to stop it. Now, each time that they come back, they don't get better, they get worse, and they get more bitter, and they always want to demand a little more. Right? And whichever one that they've been off with, during the discard process, that was just a do for now. That was somebody else that they've taken for a ride, or a regular that they've hung out with. Actually, because you're their main course. So they've waited for you to replenish your resources a little bit, but they don't want to leave you too long, because they don't want you to find out too much. Don't want to leave you to regain all of your friendships and everything, and get your support circle network and get strong again, and to see them for what they are. Yeah. So during this process, this is where you have the opportunity to educate and empower yourself. Learn as much as you can, which is to all the listeners that are listening to this now, that you are more than likely in the discard process and between what I call hooverings. Do not answer their calls. Do not take their texts. Do not entertain them any way, shape or form. Don't even try to argue with it or engage with it, because it is all about the manipulation. It is all about bringing you back and hooking you back in. And before you know where you are, they come out with spin you a line, and just to get back in the door. And then everything goes back to how it was. Yeah. And it's worse.
And as you say, it's not how it was, because then it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yes, it does, right? And then it becomes a process. So, and it can and often does result in physical violence and sexual abuse, because you become more difficult to manipulate, so they up the ante. Yeah. So rather than sort of like using smooth talking, and verbal manipulation, it starts to become physical. Yeah. So it will start be the push, little shove here, a little shove there, the breaking of your things, the threats to your children or your pets, and this is where we are into domestic violence, and there's plenty of websites out there that show you this. But this is how it starts with a narcissist, because virtually all domestic abusers, all abusers, they all have narcissistic cluster B personality types, and they don't change. No. And it is really, really quite sad, because on one level, as much as you're suffering, they're 10 times worse. So when you bring your attention back to yourself, compassion, have compassion for what you've been through. Yes. Because you have been groomed into beating yourself up. Yeah. You've already been beaten up with words and maybe even with fists. Put the stick down and stop beating yourself up, because long after the abuser has gone, they're still inside your head. And this is where PTSD comes in. Seek out therapy, go to your physician, get as much help and support, and be vocal about it. Talk to other people. Do not suffer in silence, because that is what they are hoping that you will do. Because the biggest thing that you're going to be dealing with is when you realise that you've been had, it's the shame and the guilt. Yeah. Because of what you've lost, because you feel stupid. you feel naive, you feel ridiculous, you know, and all of that. And that's a horrible, horrible place. And I send my love out to anybody listening that is actually going through that, because I completely and utterly empathise and sympathise, because I have been there. I do know what it feels like, and it is absolutely awful. In actual fact, it's more awful than the abuse of when they're there.
Yeah.
Because you're on your own.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
Yeah. I mean, and me too. I send my love out. And what I would say is the abuser goes, but you tend, when you get so used to being abused, you do for a while start to become your own abuser.
Yeah, and this is a normal part of the process, which people do need to understand with this, you know.
And also it's because you've been brainwashed, and also you've been brain damaged.
You have.
As saying in part one, you know, what it does to the brain. And what I would say to people is you've got to have self-care, and you've got to love yourself. You know, but a good thing to do is, if you've got close friends, you know, send them a text, have an agreement with them. I'll send you a text, will you text me back? Send them a text, I love you. And get them to send you a text back saying that they love you. You know,
Exactly.
look in the mirror and say, I love you. Because what the medication for getting over narcissistic abuse is self-love.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And having what I call a buddy system. Now, in the hoovering process, where they start to try to contact you, and when you have said no and you want to go no contact, they then up the ante. And this is where you get so tempted to answer their texts and emails out of anger, you know, or their phone calls, to have a go back, which is natural. Have a good trusted friend that if they do contact you, ask them to read the email or whatever, or delete it off your phone or out of your email inbox, or, you know, whatever that it is that you need to do to help protect you, so that you don't know, so you're not being further subjected to more abuse, because you're undoing the work, even if it is tiny little pigeon steps each day. You know, the greater the length of time of period between discard and hoovering, that works to your advantage. Use that time to heal, because the more healing that you do in that period, the stronger you are when it comes back around, and the more empowered that you feel. And that is what they don't want. They don't want you taking your power back, because the stronger you get, the weaker they become, because they realise they're losing control over you. And that is what they don't want, because that's when the temper tantrums come. That's when the slandering comes, and they've normally got what we call, you know, other people around that they've gone and told a whole pack of lies, because you know, they can't tell the truth. You know, I mean, I would trust a clock twice a day, you know, that doesn't work to tell more truth than they could in their entire lives. You know, you really do need to understand that they will then send other people in. So they get to the point where they know that you won't take their calls, you won't answer them and everything, so they'll use mutual friends. This is where you find out who your friends really are, and who are the undercover haters, who are the spies. And it's an awful process to go through, because you already feel like you've lost everything. This is the second layer of losing. Well, you're not losing anything other than things that don't serve, that don't work for you, that aren't there.
You don't see it at that point, no, do
No,
you?
don't. No, you don't. Because while you're pouring your heart out to a mutual friend, you know, quite often they're what I call a plant. They've been put there. They've been groomed themselves, and then they'll go back and say, oh, well, you know, so and so, they're doing this and doing that. And they're passing information back to them and informing the narc and keeping the narc in the loop, right? You have to cut these people off as well. You know, it's like the head of a hydra. You know, when you cut one head off, there's another. You've got to take the whole lot off, you know, and this is what you feel even more lonely at this point.
See, the thing is while you're going through the hoovering stage and the discard stage, you're so obsessed and you're so confused that you just wanna tell everybody. You know, strangers in the street. Before you know it, you start pouring out your problems, which may not be you naturally, you know, because you've been brain damaged, and it's natural to want to talk about it because you're so confused, you can't make sense of it. And this is where the plants come in, and 9 times out of 10 they're there to sort of, because they enjoy seeing you suffer.
Yes, they
Because,
do. Yes, they
you
do.
know, because they're just as narcissistic, because a narcissist gets off on suffering.
Yes, it does. It does. You know, and there is a term, you know, flying monkeys, you know, those that will come in and continue the abuse.
Yeah,
Now, what you have to remember is all the time that you're talking about it and pouring your heart out, what you are doing is you are vomiting up the poison that you've been spoon fed by the bowlful, by the narcissist.
yeah,
So what goes in has got to come out, you
yeah,
know, and it's like draining an abscess, and it will take as long as it takes,
yeah,
because all the time that you are holding that poison within, you can't heal. So this is where I advocate speaking out, you know, even as painful as it is in dealing with the shame and the guilt, it is better to speak out about it than it is to stay silent.
yeah, yeah. But just be careful. I know it's hard because you're in so much pain, and you are absorbed, and you do become the bore of the narcissist because it's on your mind 24/7. But what I will say is please be careful on who you confide in, because this is a time, as Lou said, when you find out who your friends aren't.
Exactly, because this is where you are even more vulnerable,
Yeah,
and to what I call secondary abuse.
yeah, yeah. So in our next shows, which will be coming along very, very soon, within the next day or two, we're going to be going into depths, Lou, about the healing. How do we heal? Because
And
in this series, you've sort of, you've shown how to identify and the causes and the symptoms,
yeah,
but we'll be talking about how to heal, won't we?
well, we're going to go from healing to, you know, into surviving and to thriving and actually living authentically in your power, where
Yeah,
you go through a complete transformation process from caterpillar to beautiful butterfly.
just like the picture on our videos. The, but-
Exactly like that.
the butterfly is everybody who has survived this narcissistic abuse.
Exactly.
And, you know, we're doing these shows out of love, because not only do we, we've had to practice self-love and self-care, we love our listeners. We love people, because that's one thing the narcissist wants to do. They want to destroy your love.
Yeah. So, you know, certainly from my point of view, I would like to, you know, educate as many people as I possibly can so that they can have choice.
Yeah,
Because when you're in the grip of a narcissistic relationship, you don't feel like you have any choice. And
it's
that is the worst feeling in the world.
and for me, I I want to put out there. I want to show people how to bring them back to love, loving themselves, and it's like you, Lo. It's about showing people, hey, there's a better life out there for you. There's 7 billion people on this planet.
There
Seven
are indeed.
billion. You know, that to you, when you're going through it, they are the be all and end all. They're not. They're
Exactly.
not.
Exactly. There's a whole world out there and it's waiting for you. And as we go through this transformation process with, you know, some tips and sort of like to guide you through it, you know, you will go from surviving to thriving to living to being very, very successful and empowered and really enjoying life, maybe for the first time.
And amen to that.
Amen to that. We will see listeners in our next series. Thank you very much,
will.
Debbie.
Thank you, darling. I love you, Lou.
I love you too, my dear.
And I love our listeners. And please subscribe to our channel because, boy, we've just scratched the surface.
We have indeed.
Good. Anyway, good night.
Good night. See you in the next one.
Peace and love. Good night to the next one.